Okay, we're going to talk about paperbacks versus hardcovers on this particular episode of the Mellow Librarian. You might have noticed the format has changed in terms of Mellow Librarian. The original concept for Mellow Librarian was to do something like the AVGN, but not as much swearing in terms of what the entertainment content is, but to deal with arts like books, graphic novels, and general artworks that needed to be discussed more on YouTube or something like that. But right now I'm going to talk about paperbacks versus hardcovers, which is a debate which is barely heard of on YouTube, and I hope to remedy this. Now, some of you might not have read any light novels, like Japanese light novels. Like, this is one of the best ones. Welcome to the NHK by Tatsuhiko Takamoto. This is for me, this is the pinnacle of light novels from Japan, because it's one of the most original concepts I've ever read, and it's a real tragedy that it's out of print. But essentially, the format, the book is actually constructed in a really classy paperback, considering that this is a really not so classy story of the detritus of modern Japanese society. But as you can see that it's got it's got a very good book design, considering there's like most light novels have illustrations, but this one doesn't. And I reckon that paperbacks have the potential to be beautiful, like this one. This is one of my favorite paperbacks I own, not just because it's really rare, but because it actually looks like it's very easy to hold. It's the page quality is really nice. It's like if you've ever had one of those back before they released the new James Bond paperback covers, they had James Bond books about this size that had a really good texture to them that I really liked. And this reminds me of that, only it's a Japanese light novel by Tatsuhiko Takamoto that I really enjoyed, because it's an original story about an issue in Japan that doesn't get talked about much, aside from in the completely wrong context of sensationalizing like mental illness and stuff. But this is a very good book in terms of its presentation. I'll talk about this book more later in another video, but here's some new trends from Penguin. You either have the Penguin Classics orange covers. This is the Twitterature orange cover for a new book called Twitterature, the World's Greatest Books Told Through Twitter. I really liked this book, and the idea that they've released it in the classic orange paperback is very, very cheeky in my point of view, because it's like it's telling the classics of literature that they've re-released in this kind of format in the cheap orange and white paperbacks, but it's told in a modern style that completely condenses what these stories mean to humanity into Twitter posts. And it might not be your deal. It's pretty funny, actually. Some of them, some of the ones are kind of hit and miss, but it's like I enjoyed this. And to me the orange and white paperbacks have a really good texture to them. They're easy to hold, and I like them, but they don't last very long, I don't think. They're very cheap, and they fall apart easily, I imagine, just like the classic ones did in your parents' day. But here we have an interesting phenomenon, the Penguin Classics Deluxe Edition of Wuthering Heights. Now, the deluxe editions have this. They have this perforated. They have this texture on the spines that make it feel like this faux old book. That makes you feel like you're reading this really old book when it's really just a reissued paperback. But it's really. It's It's sort of like they're trying to market the old style classics in a way that indie hipsters will like. But so I like the texture of these books, but sometimes the story contained within them doesn't really fit the kind of marketing scheme that they're applying to this. For example, they've turned what's his name, Heathcliff into Edward Cullen on the back because they're marketing this towards a younger crowd who might be more familiar with Twilight, and this was actually stated in Twilight, the Twilight series, as one of what's her face, that girl. It completely escapes me now, but it's, Bella. That was the name. It's like they've marketed to. They say in the Twilight books that this book is Bella's favorite book, but they've marketed it as like they've got interesting illustrations on the covers of these new classic editions, which is a really interesting marketing scheme because it's like it actually gives you a visually striking look at it renews the classics, I believe, a lot better than the boring orange and white covers. The orange and white covers are what you buy if you really can't afford the classic ones like these. But the classic ones like these, I like them better personally, even though these have their special charm. But anyway, so Penguin Classics have released some really interesting paperbacks lately. Now, this is an interesting trend in recent hardcovers. You might have seen my review of Mr. Rosenblum's List, where they've released, like, normally when they have a hardcover of something, it's got a slipcase that goes over it, but this hardcover of The Cry of the Sloth by Sam Savage, which I still haven't finished reading. You can see the bookmark there, but they've released these dainty hardcover ones that feel real. They have a really nice texture to them. Like, they're easy to hold and they're less annoying to deal with than slipcase covers tend to be. But I find it interesting that that there's this hard texture to the book that normally the slipcase is meant to protect the cover of the hard case for. But anyway, they've started releasing a few hardbacks in this format rather than with slipcases, which I find really interesting because it's really innovating in terms of what kind of hardcover a book really deserves, and whether a slipcase is kind of annoying. Like, it has a matte finish, and it's got interesting graphics on it, which really fits with the kind of story it is, like modern graphics for a modern story, but not plasticky slipcases for the hardcovers. And I like this kind of not paperback, but hardcover, because it's really interesting how they presented it, and it's good to hold in your hands while you're reading it. Anyway, that's it for this part of the video. In the other video, I'll go into the different kinds of paperbacks and hardcovers for graphic novels and manga, and comics and stuff like that. Anyway, that's another video, and I hope I've edified you to some point, even if you might not like my videos at this point. I'm trying hard here. Anyway, I'll see you.